Welcome back to Kagekaze's Domain, where we're about to try and hit levels 11 to 13. I've been playing around a bit here. I've unlocked the area to the Skeleton King, so if I get anything interesting, we can try out the new abilities on the King. But while I was here, I got the chance to give my Templar a new ability because he leveled at the 10. And I had already given him Intervene for taking care of monsters off me, and then I looked at Loyalty and Intimidate. I'm like, well, enemy's slowed, I should give him that because I want him to be my tank. But then I thought, well, I have been kind of getting up in groups and getting myself hurt. I could really use some healing, so I thought maybe I should retrain him. So I right-clicked on him and noticed that it didn't give me that pop-up that says you need to be in town to retrain. So I hit the button. And it just happened, just as you saw. It just automatically let me redo this. Now I'm going to do this one more time, and I'm going to show you. If you look at my gold, before this was a gold cost, and it had to be done in town. So what I think, because they've weakened the followers a little bit, their DPS is honestly not that high. They only do a certain percentage of the weapon DPS that you give them, so they're kind of like old hirelings. They're not going to be putting out a huge source of damage. They're mainly there to buff you and make you perform better, and you can use them to gain stats such as experience gain, magic find, and experience gain, magic find. I can't remember the last one now, forgive me. Oh, gold find, sorry, experience, magic, and gold find. So now it looks like because of that, they're going to just let you retrain him, because if you look at my gold, no cost whatsoever. So now retraining your followers appears to be free and instant. You don't have to be in town to do it. Alright, there's my Firebats rune that I've been looking forward to. It is Dire Bats. And I've unlocked Plague of Toads. Plague of Toads is still not one of my favorite abilities, but its mana cost has been adjusted. It's still fairly cheap. It is now actually cheaper than your regeneration, whereas before it was more expensive than the regeneration. So it actually took your mana just a tiny bit. It was somewhat neutral, but it still had that slight drain to it. So now it should always be a boost to your mana. I'll go ahead and equip that and use it for a little bit. And just to kind of confirm that, we'll look at my regen still is at 20. Alright, so now that I've done that, we're going to do Firebats and Dire Bats. Summon fewer, but larger bats that travel up to 40 yards and hit for 220% weapon damage as fire. So this is honestly a straight up buff. Now, it sounds like it's not going to do the damage as quickly. So the quick damage that I'm seeing right now with my Firebats, I might lose. But the 40 yards, that's almost to the end of my screen. That's a big buff to what I have right now. So I'll just kind of go up here real quick and you'll see right about here. So it's looking like it'll probably double this yardage. Not only that, but it's a straight buff to the damage as well, giving you 70% extra weapon damage on a hit. So we're going to go ahead and use that. I'm really looking forward to trying that out. Let's get out of here because this is where the Resplendent chest was. And I want to see if we can get Matriarch or Jar of Souls. There's Plague of Toads, and as you can see, my mana isn't really... Oh, nope, it's slightly going down. It is slightly going down. So I'm casting that... So what that means is I'm pretty much casting Plague of Toads more than once a second. It's just barely more than once a second. Wow, look at that.
I do not have enough mana.
Yeah, and they go all the way across. They are huge bats now. So these toads still do 130. They're kind of in line, honestly, you think about it. This does 140, this does 130. And we went over those, which does less than both of them. So the primaries are all pretty close to damage to one another now. Alright, with this layout, this is probably the event crypt. Wow, that eats through mana. Yep. Shark's Bones. That eats through mana quickly. I want to look at Soul Harvest. It's gone up to 32 intelligence. So it was 30 when I killed Leoric. Oh, look at that damage. I believe it was 29 or thereabouts when I picked it up. It was 30 when I killed Leoric. And now it's 32. So this is going up. It will constantly be going up, apparently. So that means my damage is essentially skyrocketing. And what I've noticed with my dire bats, I hit for like 100 damage. Look at that, 89 damage. He just died. He was there, and then he was gone. No retry. No extra life. Game over. Sayonara. So, Dire Bats and Soul Harvest, wow. I still kind of like the base mechanic of the Firebats a little more, to be honest. It's just, I like the way it does the conal and things like that. But to be honest with you, I'm not going to complain because just look at the damage that the bigger bats do. I may lose that, you know, real fast conal damage, but I gain slower, harder hitting bats that cross all the way across the screen. No, honestly, no complaints here.
They have gone together to the unfound land.
Alright, so since I got this event and I got to see how strong those really were, what I'll do is I'll continue on, and I will kill Leoric again and I'll continue, but I won't put it on the recording until I get closer to 13 with some newer skills, and we'll just see how the new skills feel in a build together. So I will just get to a spot here. And just real fast, I want to do these bats again. Especially since I have a... Look at that. 58, 67, he's gone.
They have gone together to the unfound land.
Alright, level 12, Rabid Dogs, and Haunt. Honestly, I like seeing Haunt again. It's been returned back to a damage dealer and not a primary ability. Let me begin this by stating I do not like Plague of Toads. Do not like it right now. Maybe not for the reasons you might think either, because I've already talked about how I don't like how erratic they are. You know, that's fine, I can deal with that, especially since it becomes useful in a group. What I don't like is that as a primary ability, Plague of Toads costs me mana. If you spam it as fast as you can, your mana starts to go down. This is a primary ability. This is an ability that I should be going to when I'm low on mana or need to get mana back. And it's just not doing that right now. I think 18 mana for having 20 mana regeneration might be a bit too high. Now, I know there's ways around that. I could be using things like Spiritual Attunement, but the truth of the matter is, primary abilities, you think about it, every class has something that they can do without having their resource. Barbarians have fury generators. I mean, it literally gives them the resource. Monks have spirit generators. Again, gives them the resource without any repercussions. Wizards, signature spells, which cost no arcane power. Demon hunters with abilities that generate hatred. So it only stands to reason that the witch doctor should have the same thing in their primary skills. That the primaries that you have will always give you your resource back so that you don't have nothing to do. And when I was fighting the Skeleton King last time, I would run out of mana by casting my Dire Bats. And of course, if I tried to use my Toads, I mean, right now I've got the Spiders back on because I like them. I like the Spiders a lot. It's not as much damage as Poison Dart, but I just like the Spiders in general, plus it's more efficient at 2 mana. Look at this, even Firebomb is 6. So I'm thinking the damage on, or sorry, not the damage, but the mana for Toads could be reevaluated. I just think it might be too low right now. So what's really nice is that we've got a special ability in Haunt here, which I'll be replacing Grasp with. Haunt an enemy with a spirit dealing 575 weapon damage as arcane over 15 seconds. And if the target dies, the spirit will haunt another nearby enemy. I'm looking forward to this with Soul Harvest, to be honest. I can see this jumping around quite a bit. Now, before it was at 500 weapon damage over 15, so it's gotten a buff to 575. And then it was, of course, brought down when it was made a primary. You know, I'm glad they changed that. Haunt did not feel like a primary ability. Now, they lowered its mana and made it so that you were constantly regenerating mana with it, but it wasn't, you know, what I would consider a primary ability, because in a primary ability you're usually sitting there doing direct damage in some form. It may not be a lot, but you're doing direct damage. Haunt is a dot. Haunt has a very specific component where it jumps to new enemies, and you cannot spam it against a single target because it will not do more damage. You can only have one Haunt on a target. You can have as many Haunts out as there are monsters, but you cannot have Haunt on more than one, or on the enemy more than once. So as a primary, I did not see it. So now the mana cost has been brought up, the damage has been brought up. So let's take a look at that. 575 over 15 seconds. You are looking at 38 weapon damage, roughly, per second. That's not bad. That's about as much damage as the poison component. No, it's more, actually, because I was going to say it was as much damage as the poison component on Dart, which is 40, but that's 40 over 2, which means it's only 20 weapon damage a second. So I'll replace my Grasp of the Dead, because to be honest, I really don't want to use my dogs. They're fragile. Horrify is great, but I just don't feel like using anything in the defensive area right now. So I will replace Grasping with Haunt. I think that'll feel good. Alright, Dire Bats has been feeling really good. If I get to a spot, like hopefully if I get a Jar of Souls at some point, but unfortunately I've already done this event. Dire Bats just tears through enemies right now. It's a massive burst of damage. Let me go into one of these other crypts. So look at that, 30 and 28. It definitely costs a lot of mana, but oh boy is it worth it. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to go ahead and Soul Harvest. I only got 2 that time. As you can see, 59 damage, and they're dead. So this 220 weapon damage is exceptional. You think about it, that's almost as much damage as Arcane Orb used to do, and that would tear through monsters as well. So he was quick. Died just as quick, though. So the Witch Doctor finally has been kind of given, in my opinion, a massive single target nuke right now in the form of these Firebats. Or Dire, specifically the Dire Bats part of Firebats. Not that Firebats is any slouch. Again, that was one of my favorite abilities. It's just gotten better. Alright, so what I need to do is get a group with Haunt. And Cormac... probably should get rid of him for this, but he doesn't do a ton of damage, so I'll try it with him. I'll just go around. I'm going to try out Haunt. I'm thinking what I'll do is try it with and without Soul Harvest, so... see what 50 mana really is. Not a lot. Still get it around. 3, 3, 1. There it is, jumping around. As you can see, their health is pretty quickly going down in this case. 3, 1, 1. See, I can just run away from this guy. Look how quickly his life bar is going down. So even though, like I said, it's only not even 50 weapon damage a second, that still hurts some of these lobies, and that's additional damage that you can be doing to a boss. So if I go against the Skeleton King, I'm going to put Haunt on him and still hit him with all of my other abilities. You know, I'll be spamming spiders on him, hitting him with bats. So it's a constant stream of damage that's just going to be keep going, and it's over 15 seconds. So I only have to hit him with it once, and then it just keeps going. So let me find a group to use Soul Harvest on, and then let's see what kind of damage we can make it do. Soul Harvest is now up to 34, so it is increasing rather nicely. See, there we got 3. There it's doing 5 per hit. And the best part is I can just hit it on a couple enemies in the group, and it just jumps to new targets. Mamma mia, that's a spicy meatball. Oh, here we go. Soul Harvest got 4. You can see it's ticking down, ticking down. And that's without me trying to hit them with anything else. I just put Haunt on them, and you can see their health just started to deplete quickly. So on my final build, I won't be using the Plague of Toads, honestly. So when I hit 13 and decide to kind of show off the final build I make, it's not going to include Plague of Toads. I just the mana cost is not worth it to me. So I will be using Haunt. I will be using my Dire Bats, unless I get something better. I get Sacrifice. I don't care for Sacrifice either. What I could do is get Zombie Dogs with Soul Harvest and sacrifice that way. That is a thought. Problem with that is, of course, at 13, if I'm going to have dogs, I should be having Jungle Fortitude because they die too quickly, but kind of like Spiritual Attunement. Alright, I'll think about that when I get my abilities. I don't want to waste too much time talking about it now. I'll see what I get and see how it feels, and we'll go from there.
Did you have many friends at the Order?
We are brothers. It is a
Alright, so this segment is being recorded about 2 to 3 days after the last one, and I have to apologize for that. Unfortunately, I went through, recorded a bunch of footage for level 13, and lost it. Simply because I had run out of hard drive space. I could salvage the audio recording, but the video recording had already gotten past. So thankfully it was only level 13, so all I have to do is kind of go over level 13 skills here, but unfortunately it just means you won't see me get them, and I have to kind of go over it again and explain it. Also, what happened between then and now has been, of course, I've had work, which has held me back. This is the start of my raid week, so I've had raids in WoW that I've had to do, so that's kept me from recording. And then there were some other news items that dropped out there, and I wanted to take a look at those before I continued. and such as the Nephalem Valor, which I decided to go ahead and put a video up for. And if you haven't seen it, I recommend it. You know, especially if you're not sure about the system, I think the new system will be good. But I'm not going to go into it detail here. Alright, so for level 13 we get 3 abilities. 1 passive, 1 rune, and 1 actual ability. And I have them already slotted. I'm actually using one of them right now. Okay, so we get Poison Dart with Numbing Darts. Toxins in the Poison Dart reduce the target's movement speed by 60% for 2 seconds. This is unchanged from any previous version that I've done with it. Same slowing speed. You still get the poison damage over time with the Numbing Dart. So as you can see, he's slowing down, but he's also taking damage. So it's still a good spell to slow them down. Still a good primary. So you're only doing the 140% weapon damage all told when the poison ticks. Obviously Poison Darts is going to be, or I apologize, Splinters for Poison Darts is going to be superior in damage, but this is for more utility to slow them down. Next thing we got was Spiritual Attunement, a passive which increases your maximum mana by 20% and allows you to regenerate 1% of your maximum mana per second. This is great for high cost builds. You will gain your maximum mana, which of course as you know goes up by level, will be increased 20%, and then that maximum value that's been increased by 20% will also influence the regeneration rate at 1% of maximum mana. In this case, you'll see that it's giving me about 3, more than 3 mana per second, with a mana pool of over 300, and it should be reflected in our details screen here. Yep, there you go, 23.56. So I'm getting about 3.56 from that because I don't have any mana regeneration gear. But what I do have is this plus maximum mana damage. You may have seen me talk about that before, and I apologize if I do repeat myself over anything I've talked about before because of the time that's passed. But I have the plus 28 maximum mana here, and my intent with that was to synergize with Spiritual Attunement. I had another item that gave me 2 mana per second regeneration. Well, as you can see, my maximum mana regeneration with Spiritual Attunement is much greater than 2. And granted, 28, 1% of 28 is 0.28. But in the long run, in the future, when you get items that have more regeneration and things like that on it, that's something to consider. That's something with plus maximum mana. If you're using Spiritual Attunement, may be better for you. If you're not using Spiritual Attunement, then you might want to think about mana regeneration gear. Of course, gear that has both is very nice. The last thing we got, and unfortunately I'm going to admit this kind of ability is not my favorite kind of ability. Sacrifice. You blow up your zombie dogs, causing them to deal 200% of your weapon damage as physical to all enemies within 12 yards. Now, my issues with this skill are not really the skill's power or anything like that. It's just the gameplay. I don't really go for it. I don't like sacrificing pets. I prefer to use them. I have seen someone online use them fairly effectively, and kind of here you can see if I surround them, I just killed an entire elite pack. So it's got its uses. It's a lot of weapon damage. I mean, 200% per dog. That's 600% weapon damage with an let's just say unruined dogs. There's a passive that lets you have 4 dogs. 800% weapon damage. If you can manage to get your dogs to surround a target, 800% weapon damage. You get yourself a high damage weapon and get the dogs up and possibly even get Soul Harvest up, and you could potentially be doing a massive amount of damage in one shot. One of my biggest problems with it right now is that the zombie dogs, to use that massive burst of damage on something like the Skeleton King is not easy, because the Skeleton King will destroy the dogs before you really get a chance to get them in position and get your soul harvest stacks up. If you want to get your soul harvest stacks up, you pretty much have to do that first, then summon the dogs, and then get them around Leoric. The dogs die so fast that it's really hard to time it. The other problem with it is zombie dogs has a 1 minute cooldown, which means if I hit him once, I can't hit him again with it for another minute. Now what you can do to compensate for this is to bring your dogs up, wait until the cooldown is over, and then go ahead and start fighting. Of course, this means you're going to have to hope that your dogs stay alive if you want to get Soul Harvest up. Your best bet in that case is probably to just let them surround Leoric and hit him with Sacrifice without worrying about Soul Harvest. Then possibly get Soul Harvest from his ads, and from there you can proceed to hit him with a full stack Soul Harvest with the zombie dogs. And then of course you will have to wait for your dogs to come back up again. You'll have to use other abilities. All in all, this is not a bad idea, and I think it can be a fairly powerful combination. The problem is, if you're going to do something like that in the beta, we've only got 4 skill slots, so it's kind of hard to work on it. If I'm going to use Soul Harvest with dogs and Sacrifice, I've already taken up 3 of my 4 slots. That means I only have room for 1 damage dealer. And in this case, I've got Poison Dart, but I could pick any other damage dealer. It's just really tough to pick one because you either have to pick something that's going to take up your mana, or you have to pick something that's going to let you be more efficient. So I could do something maybe like, let's just say Firebats with Dire Bats. Let's put that on. I'll try it out, see how it feels.
Need more time.
Alright, let me wait till that comes back up. Alright, and as you can see, the mana is going down quite quickly, but thankfully with Spiritual Attunement I am able to compensate for that. So it might be something I could do. Use the bats, hit Leoric with the Sacrifice. I'll just find a quick pack here, and what I might do is just go ahead and get a recording of fighting the king. Look at that. See, I put all 3 dogs around that one monster and he didn't quite die, probably because he was out of range of a skeleton or 2, or out of range of one of the monsters or 2.
Needs more time. Undoes you.
Alright, so far this build has been working. I just have to stagger out my bats a little bit to keep my mana up.
I do not have enough mana.
As you saw there, I was able to use Sacrifice to clear out one of the pillars. So as I move forward into King Leoric's room, one thing I wanted to cover, which I don't believe I covered in another video, or it might even been here in the Witch Doctor series, that I mentioned that Leoric felt like he was taking longer to kill. And so I found out, I had to go back and I reviewed some footage from the previous patch and me taking out Leoric. and I found out that yes, King Leoric has been buffed. I don't know about his damage. I don't know if his damage has gone up, but his health certainly has. He has gained about 800 hit points for single player play. This is about a 50% buff, because he was at about 1600, I believe, and now he's at about 24. So that's no small margin. So yes, if the Skeleton King feels like he's taking a little bit longer to kill to you, then the chances are he is. So what I'll do is I'm going to hit him with this initial sacrifice. You can tell that my soul harvest isn't going to last through this. So what I'll do is I'm going to try and gather at least one stack from Leoric himself. I'm going to bring my dogs down here because I want them to surround him. If he stays on that step, I'm not going to be able to do that. So let's see if I can come down here, get my dogs to follow me. See, they're already hurt. There he is. Surround him like that. I didn't get my first stack like I meant to. It's alright. Let me summon everything. Okay, now I have my stack. Pull up the dogs. So, as you can see, it's a nice chunk of damage, but it's not something I can rely on against a massive enemy like Leoric. Sacrifice, I think, is really going to be more suited for taking out groups of enemies or taking out elite packs. A boss really just has way too much health to be sacrificing your dogs for. Unless that boss has some kind of pack that you really need to be concerned with killing, like these skeletons. If I was really concerned about killing them, there's the possibility there. Out of his way. So it does a lot of damage. It's a good skill in a pinch, but you're obviously not going to rely on it for something like this. Now they die so fast that having dogs on Leoric may not be the best idea in the world, but I'm hoping that the dogs will scale a little better at higher difficulties. After all, they did nerf some of the pet survival abilities in one of the patches, so I'm hoping that that's an indicator that maybe pets were too good at the end and they needed to be balanced out. I would hate to think that my dogs are going to constantly be one-shot as I play through the game. Alright, so with that said, let's go over the final impressions of the Witch Doctor. I am happy with the Witch Doctor. I am... The Witch Doctor never ceases to amaze me, really. And getting this Soul Harvest ability has made it even better. The ability to buff up my damage and start putting out insane numbers is a great feeling, and you have to be in charge of that. It's not just I'm casting a spell and boom, ooh, I get a whole bunch of damage because I just cast a spell. No, I have to go in there, make sure I gather the buff, have to make sure I get 5 people in a group if I want to hit the maximum damage, and then I have to capture it there. I have to get in close. So there are downfalls to, or drawbacks to using Soul Harvest, simply because if you have to get in close, and with certain monster fixes for elites and higher difficulties, that might not be a great idea. Now, a lot of people have said that Soul Harvest feels overpowered. And you know what? I am going to agree with you to a point. Right now, Soul Harvest feels very, very overpowered. You saw when I got a 5-stack and I started using Dire Bats, and I'm putting out like 60 damage or something like that against mobs that don't have hardly near that much hit points. What you have to take into effect, though, is I have gear with no intellect on it. And at this level, I believe well, not 13, it's higher now, but leveling up here, unfortunately, Hadric doesn't have his the wands anymore at the low level, and they don't have the int on them, but most gear with intelligence at this level is going to proc about somewhere between 1 and 5. So what I did is I assumed that 9 pieces of gear, so I kind of went, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, say that's 8, offhand 9, not even 10. I could go with 10. But let's just say 9 pieces of gear have, int on it. And each piece doesn't have maximum. Let's not say 5 int, let's say 4. That would give me about 36 intelligence on gear alone. Plus, I've got an innate intelligence of 50. So, when you put everything together, and I'm just kind of making sure I've got this right. So I'm going to do the 36. My calculator's being a pain. Alright, so you think about it, the stacks for this buff right now is 180. But if you put my intellect together, if I had all intellect gear and my natural intellect, I would have 86. So what am I gaining here? It's going to be 180 by 80 over 86. You're looking at about double damage, really. Double. 2 times. Without the innate intelligence 3 times. Or, sorry, 5 times. Just 5 times based on my gear alone. Now, here's the part where it gets interesting. Soul Harvest has been gaining in intellect gain per level, but I also gain intellect per level, meaning that the amount of damage benefit that this is giving me is not going to be as big of a percentage. Like right now it's 5 times as much damage, but I'm going to be gaining more intellect and eventually going to get more mana gear. When you craft with Hadrig, one of the wands in there had something to proc like maybe 20 something damage. I basically estimated that you could probably get over 180 intelligence on gear if you went for pure intelligence gear. So if you had that plus your innate intelligence, you would essentially just be doubling your damage instead of doing 5 times. So what you have to take into consideration here, now we can all say that Soul Harvest is overpowered, You know what, this skill has lasted for multiple iterations of this beta. Now we're in the polish phase, so that means we're going to see more changes as far as damage tweaks. But there's something about Soul Harvest that I think that we're not seeing the full picture here. It feels powerful here, but I have a feeling that near the end of the game, when you start finding intellect gear with massive amounts of intellect on it, especially in Inferno, you're going to find that the buff of Soul Harvest may not be as high as we think it is. We could end up getting intelligence gear equal to 5 stacks, and using Soul Harvest just lets us do double that. And if monsters are not dying very quickly to your base damage, they're only going to die, they'll die twice as fast obviously, but I have a feeling that we won't be one-shotting Inferno mobs with Soul Harvest. So that's something I want you guys to think about. Because honestly, I agree that right now the Witch Doctor does a lot of damage in the beta up to level 13. But in-game play is really where a lot of the balance is going to come out, level 60. Also, I want you to keep in mind, if you're concerned about Soul Harvest damage and being overpowered in, say, PvP, honestly, I don't see that being a problem. At most, if your enemy team is good, you're going to get 2 stacks of this. And that's not going to be as big of a boost as the full 5, obviously. So, Soul Harvest's range requirement is what's going to hold you back for things like that. Even in high levels single player play, getting in close, we don't know if you might run into a mob that's going to end up killing you because of that. You try and get in close, maybe you get jailed when you get in close. And then all of a sudden, oh, well, now you're going to get raped because all these monsters are around you and you were hoping to get in and get out. Speaking of jailers, I have to admit, I ran into a jailer here in the beta. I did not think that they would be available this early on. I thought they were only available after the gate in the cemetery, but I was doing a little bit of co-op for footage for the Nephalem Valor thing, and I ran into a jailer. Go figure, right? That was pretty cool. Alright, but back on topic. Witch Doctor feels good. I think it's too early to say whether or not the Witch Doctor needs to be nerfed or buffed. I think by itself, without Soul Harvest, a lot of the abilities feel pretty good. Soul Harvest just obviously makes it better. Looking forward to seeing what the Witch Doctor can do. This is honestly, playing the beta has made it very hard to pick a final class when the retail game comes out. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, this is Kagekaze reminding you to thumb up the content if you like it, and please feel free to leave your comments, suggestions, and questions in the comments below.